Hello, good afternoon, and welcome to a webinar on the Registered Apprenticeship Program, and as well a panel discussion featuring two industry experts. We're going to talk about their corporate experience as well as their consulting experience working with manufacturing companies to either kickstart or reboot and or set up and establish a registered apprenticeship program. My name is Allison Graylis, and I'm the president and founder of the Women in Manufacturing Trade Association and Education Foundation. And we are very passionate around the power of registered apprenticeship programs. And we are very happy this afternoon to share insights on how you and your company can benefit from establishing a program. We have two industry experts who are going to be joining us for our discussion today. But before we hop into our discussion on the topic of registered apprenticeship programs, I'd like to share with you a brief video that will illuminate some of the stories we've heard directly from manufacturing companies that we work with about the power of apprenticeship programs.
Sorry about that, Allison. My audio is acting funny. We'll try to show it at the end.
Okay. Hey, we are flexible, so we will do the video at the end to again leave some impressions of other corporate experiences as they have embarked on a registered apprenticeship program. So as I shared, today is a discussion around this very important topic, and we have two guest experts who are joining us for this dialogue. I think the next slide shows us the headshots of the folks joining us. So first we have Joni Cole. She is Vice President of Human Resources at Pridgeon and Clay, located in Grand Rapids, Michigan. There, she leads human resources and a very successful registered apprenticeship program. Her philosophy for human resources is to create and retain a talented workforce that is engaged and strives for continuous improvement and to help lead the company to accomplish its mission and vision. Welcome, Joni.
Thank you.
And our second panelist is Melissa MacGregor. She is a subject matter expert in registered apprenticeship programs and the implementation process, and also is a field expert in outreach and employer engagement. Melissa is also currently lead on a DOL-funded industry intermediary contract that offers complimentary technical assistance and coaching to sites interested in developing an apprenticeship program across the manufacturing and or agricultural sectors. Thank you and welcome, Melissa.
Thanks, Allison.
So we're going to have a great dialogue today. We do want this to be interactive, so you'll have the opportunity through the chat function to pose a question that will go to our moderator, Jen Ambern, and she will bring it to our group for discussion. And we'll first kind of kickstart with some basic information about registered apprenticeship programs. So those participating today, your companies may have heard about these programs, or perhaps you have an existing program or had a program that you're looking to rebirth or reboot. So we first want to start with Melissa to give us a little bit of the framework of what is a registered apprenticeship program? How does it differ from perhaps a homegrown or in-facility created program? So can you tell us a little bit about what these programs are and how do registered apprenticeship programs differ from maybe some other apprenticeship programs?
Sure. So registered apprenticeship is a quality marker. People can have a work-based learning program that supports their talent development just as easily as a registered apprenticeship program. But that registration piece really opens up access to tax incentives. And also one of the most important things is that it will end at the end of the apprentices program with them receiving a national portable credential that they can take with them that says you're fully qualified for this occupation. Apprenticeships are specific to an occupation. So you would have an apprenticeship program, say in, CNC precision machinist, but not manufacturing. So you would have all of the things that are specific to a particular occupation. It requires there's very few things that are very prescriptive about it. It requires classroom hours that are separate from your on-the-job training. It requires on-the-job training hours and a certain number of hours. It requires mentorship. So every apprentice receives training and kind of the oversight of their career trajectory within the company from a mentor who is an expert in that occupation. And it requires wage increases. And so you would pay an unqualified person a lower wage than you might pay somebody who is fully qualified for the occupation, with the intent of getting them to that wage by the end of their program when they're fully qualified. So it's basically a training program. And I think that we'll get a little bit deeper into it as we continue the conversation. So I'll leave it at that for now.
Great. That's an excellent overview. So, I mean, some highlights that you had illuminated were obviously those portable skills and that credentialing that someone, has upon completion, and the fact that it's recognized in, a very specific area of an occupation, which is really important. And again, something that has a lot of worth to a potential employee, as they're looking for opportunities for professional development and upskilling within their company and current place. So Joni, I know Pridgeon and Clay. Tell us a little bit first, I guess, about Pridgeon and Clay as a company, and then
Sure.
as well the company's history with apprenticeship programs.
Yes. Yep. Very good. So Pridgeon and Clay, we're a family-owned company, been in business for over 75 years. We're metal stamping, welding, and assembly. And so when I joined Pridgeon and Clay, it was my first job after college. I'm not going to say when, but a long time ago in the 90s, started working here. And I started when there was an apprenticeship, a registered apprenticeship program established. And so that's my first exposure with that. And at the time, we just focused on tool and die and CNC. But over the years, and even with other metal stampers that I've worked for, we have added welding technicians and also maintenance as well too. So so I've been exposed to that, and we had a pretty steady program, throughout the 90s, I would say. And I would say in the 2000s, we would say that the program might have faded, but I think at the time we had the ability to attract fully talented individuals into these positions. And so I think that's kind of where it faded away for us a little bit. And then in 2008, obviously the economic downturn happened. And once we were recovering from that, then we were finding that it was very difficult to find anyone in skilled trades because we had people exiting the industry or moving out of the state of Michigan, at least. So for some reason, I was fortunate enough that I have my own training department here at Pridgeon and Clay. And so we actually developed our own program. We did that through our skilled trade supervisors, our training department, even probably some of the skilled trade people themselves to help build a program. And really, the idea of like a registered or homegrown program is that you really do have some of the same foundations, the framework, which is going to be the hours. It's going to be the education. It's going to make sure that they have the demonstrated performance that you're looking for. So we put that in place, and actually went beyond getting a certificate and had our skilled trades do an associate's degree, which worked well for quite a few years. We even received an award from the PMA recognizing us for our training achievement. But then we discovered probably around the 2015 timeframe that we wanted individuals or people who were in the skilled trades. They didn't want our internal program. They wanted a state card to show that they're well-rounded. Not that I think that we had a bad program, but they wanted that identification to show that they have gone through the specific training. And so what do? In HR, you always want to, attract your right talent. And so you just kind of mold along with the workforce and what they're looking for. So we did go back and put that in place. And then that worked quite well. But then, of course, the next event, after COVID, I started seeing, some individuals, whether it be recent high school grads or different manufacturing employees that wanted to enter into the skilled trades. But now I'm starting to see that there's some you know, especially the younger generation that says, you know, if I want to go to school, I would have gone to school, that they're looking maybe more for just hands-on, which we did accommodate that to a certain extent because again, we want to attract talent. So we do have two paths. We have a what I call a Department of Labor path of register, and then I do offer a non register program where they still do have to take some classes, but they follow the same framework as well with the registered apprenticeship. So same amount of hours where they're required. You know, the increases in pay, and then we do performance appraisals just to monitor their overall performance. So right now, I'm kind of accommodating, you know, both sides. But yeah, we do have 4 registered apprenticeship programs for maintenance, weld techs, tool and die, and CNC. And so I'm lucky that, you know, with Pridgeon and Clay, we have about 600 employees here in the Grand Rapids area, Michigan. I have worked for smaller stampers before with about 150 employees. And so for those of you who work for smaller employers, I can certainly feel your pain sometimes with a smaller group, but there are ways to achieve it, especially with that mentorship piece. If you want to go after a registered program, you just need to be creative with how that, you know, happens. So so I've been on both sides, you know, large and small, and seen them be successful for both situations. So, but yeah, so that's kind of our timeline with PNC.
That's really interesting. So when you first started, you know, in a very established program, it then went through kind of I guess not downturn, but it changed a little bit in terms of its sustainability. And then you've now rebooted it where it sounds like there's 2 pathways, one for the registered apprenticeship program, and that model, and then one that's maybe a bit of a different journey for a participant, but still having some obviously components that are similar to the registered apprenticeship program.
Yeah, correct. Yep. Mhm.
So when you went through this process of kind of rebooting the program, the more formal registered apprenticeship program at Pridgeon and Clay, I'm sure there were some lessons learned. So are there some things that you wished you had known or thought about when you first started or restarted the program at your company?
Yeah, I think the most interesting thing that I've learned, you know, as you know, we always call it the Department of Labor or as register with the state. So, you know, then you think that it's going to be very rigid and that there's, you know, oh, you've got to follow this to the T. But let's say your program changes, you get a new piece of equipment and that needs to be incorporated, or when you work with a community college and they change their certificate program, the classes that are in there. I guess the thing that I learned is that these programs are flexible. You can change them. You know, what was or what once worked well, maybe 5 years ago, maybe there's some changes. And I think before, I guess one of our mistakes, you know, was that we were trying to stay to the original agreement. But really, there you know, the Department of Labor or whoever, very easy to work with. We changed some of our courses, changed some of the hours that were required in different areas. So I will just say that, you know, it's flexible, and they, you know, you really are the, I guess, the, you know, the one in charge of really helping to develop that so it meets your needs. You know, the when it becomes registered, you know, they're there to authenticate that this is a thorough program. And so that's just something to keep in mind, that, you know, you can change this. It can be flexible. The framework, you still need to meet those requirements, but they are accommodating and do fit all different types of industries.
So flexibility is, I think, probably great for people to hear that there is some of that flexibility, at least on the design, as
Yeah.
long as obviously certain criteria and such are met. So I know this is a bit related, and just when we talk about resources, or maybe for people listening. So within your organization, you know, how much of a lift is it to support the registered apprenticeship program? Is it a singular person that has the role of kind of leading this effort? Is it your team? What type of commitment is it resource-wise and people-wise to support the Registered Apprenticeship Program?
So with the apprenticeship program, you know, there's 3 pieces. It's the apprentice themselves, it's the supervisor or mentor, probably both, the supervisor and mentor, supervisor of the department, the mentor, the one that's training the individual, and HR. So all three have to work together and be committed to the program. So it's going to be the apprentice that, you know, when they sign the agreement that they're going to do this, that they do follow through and that they take their classes. For the supervisor and the mentor, it's going to be making sure that they achieve their hours. And that they truly do become a well-rounded individual. There's been times where I've seen it where you know, it's so easy because everybody gets so tied up in their day job to say, like, just put this person here. But what's wonderful about this program, it does force the people who are training to move the people around so that they're well-rounded. And then for HR, you know, getting to your question, I have one person that pretty much oversees it. He is my technical trainer. He's actually been through the apprenticeship himself. So he works closely, you know, with the apprentices and with the supervisors to make sure that they're achieving their hours and that they are becoming, you know, trained, well-rounded. And then HR is the one to make sure that they meet all the requirements. And then they do the performance appraisals and also do the increases. So it takes really a commitment of all. It's a company, you know, program, I would say, not just an HR apprenticeship. It's a definite investment for the company and for the employees.
Great guidance. So Melissa, as we look at companies who might be thinking about starting programs at their organizations, what are some tips that you would pass along to them as they start in this journey?
So I would, I mean, obviously, I'm coming from a perspective of an intermediary, and my best tip is to work with an intermediary. Jobs for the Future is an intermediary, so of course, I'd love it if you call on us. You could work with me, or we have a team of experts who can help you navigate all of the decisions that are going to be required to build the program and put the partnerships together within your local workforce ecosystem. There are also dozens of other intermediaries across the field. So it is important for you to work with someone that you know and you trust. And if you want to reach out to an intermediary that is near you, that's also a good idea. Secondly, and this is to the point that you made earlier about smaller companies, I would say that I would recommend trying to find an existing group-sponsored registered apprenticeship program. So just in terms of the logistics of registered apprenticeship, there's kind of two types. There's individual programs, which is one company and it's their program and they're hiring all their own apprentices. And then there's a group, which is an intermediary of some kind, maybe a community college or a workforce board or an industry association might sponsor the program or register it with the Department of Labor for multiple employers who are all participating in the same program. And so I always recommend that if you can find a group program to join their program, it's a little bit, it's a lot easier than starting your own program. Starting your own program is a bit of a lift, and it would also reduce the time to onboard apprentices by, I would say, several months. So if you can find a group program that's established, you know, an employer would just sign kind of a one-pager, and then they can begin recruiting. This is kind of, you would do what you would normally do, is to hire somebody, and someone else is kind of overseeing the management of the program. And I also just want to say to Joni's earlier point, you know, there's no apprenticeship program that operates and looks exactly like it did when it was implemented. It's always an iterative process. So you kind of put together your program how you envision it. But once you start working in it and doing it, and you go through a whole cycle and you train somebody, there's going to be improvements that you can make on your own processes. And that's there's so much flexibility. You can amend anything about it. So I recommend just working with an intermediary who can guide you through that.
Great guidance. So I think some recommendations there for small size companies looking perhaps for a group program to be a part of, because it is a lift and an investment of a company, and that would obviously be more of an investment for a small size company. But as well, again, I think, you know, Melissa shared Jobs for the Future has been a great partner with the Women in Manufacturing Association. So they have an amazing amount of resources and support that can be offered. And as we close today's session, please know that we will be sharing JFF's information and a QR code where you can learn more about how they could help you on this journey. So, as we look at this investment, it is a corporate investment of both time, energy, resources, people power to support a registered apprenticeship program. Some leaders of organizations, when this idea or concept is brought to them, might be a bit skittish or worried about this investment of time and resources, especially for employees who may, after completion, choose to go elsewhere. So, as you look, Melissa, when you're working with clients and perhaps that concern is raised by leadership of a company, how do you respond, or what guidance would you give them if they do have this fear about investing in a registered apprenticeship program because people could potentially leave after completion?
Sure. First of all, I would say you should expect that your people are going to leave at some point in time. Probably some of your most trained talent is going to leave at some point, and it's still going to leave a hole in your workforce. There's also an old saying that circulated forever since before I was in this business about what if you don't train your employees and they stay, which is the harder truth, right? If you have untrained employees who are working for you, or if you train employees and they leave. But the question, I think, really gets to the idea of retention. So apprentices who complete their programs have a 92% retention rate. Apprenticeship at its core is a set of strategies that supports and builds retention into your workforce. So first of all, you're providing training and a safe work environment, which is huge. Employers are supporting apprentices in gaining the education and backing that up with their on-the-job training. They provide apprentices with mentors who oversee their careers, not just, their specific training. Apprentices receive wage increases, so they know that they've got some longevity with this company. If you sit someone down on their first day of work and say, here's your job, this is what you're going to do, indefinitely, they're going to immediately want to find the door. But if you tell them, this is a long-term training program, and today we're learning this, and tomorrow we're going to be learning this other thing, they can see themselves staying within the company for a longer period of time. And also, I know apprentices who have said, they taught me everything. They paid for my college. I'm going to stick around and give them what they paid for. So, registered apprenticeship is just an incredibly powerful tool for employers in retaining the staff that they have.
Excellent. And Joni, any insights there that you've seen at your company about kind of that concern that may be raised when you look at kind of the investment of these types of programs?
Yeah, I had the same thing asked to me probably about 10 years ago for fear of like, well, what if we train and they leave? And of course, our response was, well, what if we don't and they stay? And, being in HR forever and, looking at trying to increase your talent, I would, this is my philosophy, but I'd rather have a few years with someone who is fantastic, who's motivated and puts everything into it versus a lifetime with someone who really just does the minimum. And so I think you build a stronger workforce if you do invest in them, for sure. So it's so that's been my philosophy. And I also think that if we're in skilled trades, I mean, training, mentoring, I mean, that's really kind of the cost of doing business. If you want to be successful and you want to deliver good parts to your customers on time, you can only do that with a trained workforce. And I do think that I was only asked that question once at about 10 years ago. But my, current leadership, they agree, for sure that training's necessary. And honestly, I have seen people who are in training positions leave because they didn't feel that they were getting the training that they wanted. When I have apprentices going in, I mean, they're going in, they want to learn, they want to be well-rounded, they want to make sure that they move around, they want to be as talented as possible. So I have seen people leave if they felt that they weren't being invested in, because they're looking out for themselves. And I think it's a recruiting tool as well, that if you say, hey, I'm going to invest in you and I'm going to help you build your resume, I think that is pretty motivating, for someone. And honestly, with our experience, yes, there has been a couple that have left after they've received their completed apprenticeship, but the majority have stayed. and we really don't have a lot of turnover in our skilled trades at all. So, so I think that that's proof, for sure. So yeah, so I don't think any employer should be afraid of training.
Powerful statements from both of you. And we do an annual survey with an organization called Xometry, and we surveyed and heard from about more than 1,000 women in industry this past year. And the number one thing that they said that they're looking for to stay in manufacturing is training and education and opportunities for professional development. And interestingly, we have an info area of our website on our apprenticeship partnership with Jobs for the Future. And we so often get completed forms from individual women in industry looking for how do I join a registered apprenticeship program. So I think there's a hunger and appetite for this type of training and development at organizations and companies. And so as you're looking with a challenge workforce where you're having perhaps difficulty with retention, this could be a great solution and as well a great recruitment tool. I mean, we know that there's more than 500,000 open positions in manufacturing. How great that you could promote potentially if you have an existing program to a potential workforce, hey, we have this very portable skill set that we're going to be training and investing in you as an employee as a great way to recruit and attract someone to your company. So I think great positives for reasons why you should be either rebooting or starting a program. And obviously there's people to help as you embark on this journey and investment. So Joni, as you folks have, rebooted program, have a successful program present day, what are some of the successes and positive outcomes that you have seen at your organization and company because of or as a result of the program?
Yeah, I mean, it was a scary time a few years ago, trying to find skilled labor, and I'm always a big believer of development from within. And so I'm pretty fortunate right now. We have, I think, seven, I don't know how many it is. I no, I don't think it's 17, but we have probably at least seven people on the wait list to get into our program. So we pull from let's say it could be high school, recent grads that we pull from, and a current workforce as well. But really within our current workforce, we've already got a waiting list of people wanting to get into our apprenticeship program. So I think that that's a definite success, to have kind of a pool there to pull from. Although I kind of like to pull from both areas, but really a success is that just really our overall performance. I mean, we have well-rounded individuals who are committed, and their overall company performance, has improved overall, especially in tool and die, where it is so difficult, to find the talent outside. So it is great to have opportunities for, let's say, if it's a machine operator, a press operator, that somebody never even thought about going into, and now they can, they're learning about this lucrative career. I mean, and we pay well. And so what a great outcome. I mean, we pay for their schooling, we train them, and they get paid very well. I'll tell you a funny story. So I went to school in HR, and as soon as I started at Pridgeon and Clay, and I saw what these tool and die guys are making, I thought, oh my gosh, I should have went into that. I could be making a lot of money right now. So, but yeah, I think having a good, robust program, making sure it runs well, that's HR's responsibility, is to hold everybody accountable. But our success story are our people. Our people are engaged, they perform well, they care, we've invested in them, we hear from them if they've got concerns about what's going on the floor. So I guess our success story really is our talented workforce.
That's excellent. And there's a question here that's in the chat that I just think we might as well answer while we're on the topic. Someone posed the question about kind of what percentage of an individual participant's schooling do you cover? Is it some, all, and what kind of education is it that's being paid for?
Sure. So for Pridgeon and Clay, everybody does it a little bit differently. So we say for an undergrad, actually, let me back up because I'm mixing it up with tuition reimbursement. So because we have tuition reimbursement and then we have apprenticeship. So apprenticeship, we cover ahead of time, and as long as they get a C or better, we will keep covering their tuition all the way through. And so we have them go and complete a certificate, which is a little bit less than an associate's degree. But yeah, like I said, my company's pretty big into education and training. So we will pay 100% plus their books. And we value that because, this is the lifeline of our company are the skilled trades and our semi-skilled trades too, but our skilled trades. So we do put a big investment into our people.
That's huge. And then on top of that, you said you're offering tuition reimbursement to other employees.
Correct. For other for other programs, including master's degree as well too. So yeah, we've always family. They're a great family. They believe in education. So I think that's one of the reasons why I came back to PNC after being gone for 7 years. Is that yeah, it's fun when you're in HR, when you work for a family who really care about the employees. So
it's very important. So Melissa, as we are trying to inform or help or support some folks listening online today and who might be thinking about starting a program or newly in a program that they've just started, what would you suggest or what recommendation would you give about the first step or those initial steps towards a full apprenticeship program?
So I think I said this before and I'll say it again, maybe multiple times. Start with asking for support from an intermediary. You can literally just give me a call. My information is going to be at the end of this presentation. And it's very specific. So who you are, what occupation that you're interested in potentially starting in your apprenticeship program. If you're a community college or other types of group sponsors, I would give a different answer in terms of that first step. But as a general rule, if you're just curious and you want to get started, I would say go to the Department of Labor website and download the standards, and you'll get a feel for the types of questions you're going to have to answer. And if it doesn't make sense, it doesn't make sense, right? So if you're gonna encounter decision points that you're gonna have to make about, who are your partners and what is your apprentice to mentor ratio and all kinds of questions that are on that form, that if you have some intermediary support, they'll be able to help you and walk you through those decision points. If you are an employer and you're just wanting to get started, I would say you probably have a need for a particular type of talent. You would need to decide on what occupation you want to register. I would go on, ONET to determine sort of what are the things a person in that occupation really needs to know and be able to do, and then kind of get your internal house in order to understand if you have the capacity to train, and who the partners you would need. If you don't have that capacity internally, who would you invite into your program to partner with you on that? Partnerships are critical. Apprenticeships can't stand alone. Everyone needs partners. So you might partner with a training provider. You'll definitely partner with the Department of Labor. You'll have potentially recruiting partners. And so just kind of getting a lay of the land in terms of who's going to do this work with you is important. So depending on who you are and where you are in the stage, my answer would be different. And so I would say just give me a call and we'll talk through your specific situation, and I'll nudge you off into the right direction, and we can go from there.
Great. And you mentioned a few resources. So obviously, again, Melissa's a resource jobs for the future. You mentioned ONET. I think it's onetonline.org. Again, if you're trying to do some research on the occupation that you might be looking to train for or skill for. And then apprenticeship.gov, a great resource as well. I know we have links to that on our website, but those are both great resources as you're starting perhaps that early exploration as to what might be a fit or need for your company. So great recommendations, Melissa. And so we talked a little bit about the how to get started. And Joni, from your perspective, as you're giving guidance or you're thinking about companies that might be just looking into this, what would be some other early steps that you might recommend for a company?
Yeah, I mean, Melissa named some good ones. But you know, community colleges, you know, they're very familiar with this. They could put you in contact with the right people. They can discuss, I mean, because that's what they're almost built for. They've got certificates designed for this to help support. So community college, we're lucky here in Michigan. We have Michigan Works that helps us out as well. Actually, even in Michigan, we've got grants called the Going Pro. That's a training grant, and they're all about apprenticeships as well too. And they actually will reimburse you money for your efforts in apprenticeship as well too. Now that's the state of Michigan. I can't comment on the other states, but but also Department of Labor and Melissa, or just really anybody else that you network with that might have an apprenticeship program can help you out as well. But really, there's quite a bit of resources out there. I think it's just, you know, start making those connections and start figuring it out. It's really not difficult. You know, the framework is just to have good job descriptions, understand what you want to train on, understand what you want the curriculum to be, you know, making sure that you are doing the progression, that you come up with a fair wage scale. Really, those are the big pieces. The toughest parts when you're a smaller company is that mentorship piece, especially if they need to work a different shift. That you may need to get creative with, but really, it's not difficult. I think if you know, if we can do it, I think anybody can do it. There's definitely resources out there to help individuals out.
Yeah, and I think Maria just put in the group chat, you know, MEPs, manufacturing extension partnerships, can be great resources as well, even if you're not a manufacturer. So thanks, Maria, for reminding us of that. There was a question that speaks to something you just mentioned, Joni, which was around the mentor piece. So someone posed in the chat, how prescriptive is your on-the-job training program? How much guidance do you give the mentors, leaders on what the apprenticeships should be doing on the job? This person in particular is starting a CNC apprenticeship program now and is struggling to identify how much of the on-the-job part needs to be organized.
Yeah. So, you know, a lot, you know, again, it's working with let's say my skilled trade supervisors. It's sitting down, it's going through and say, okay, how many hours do you think that they'll need on this to become a proficient you know, journeyman or journey person? And you might bring some other people in to talk about that, but it's breaking it down and then figuring out like how many hours, you know, would you think somebody would need to be a successful individual. From there, you know, so it could be so many hours of working on this piece of equipment. It could be this many hours of troubleshooting. And then that's where that mentor, that expert comes in, because they kind of have an idea of what that should look like. So they're, you know, the apprentice is going to be the one responsible for documenting their hours. The mentor and the supervisors are going to be the one to say, yep, we agree, you have had that experience, because our supervisors and even the experts out there are just as, you know, vested as anyone else, because they want their workforce to be able to be competent and go out there and work on their own. So I think it's just starting to break it down, starting somewhere. And you know, as Melissa and I have said before, that if you're like, oh no, I need 1,000 hours here, not only 500, they need to have this exposure. It's just to start building it. And that's the best that you can do. And as you go through it, you'll learn like, oh, they need to have this piece that we forgot. Or, you know, the job could change a little bit. Like I said, a new piece of equipment comes in, you need them to learn that, then you may need to adjust. But I think at the end, they're going to have what, 8,000 hours of training. So there's a lot of flexibility as to how you build that. And it's just going to be HR and the skilled trades and some of your subject matter experts working together to try to determine what that looks like. So HR is going to be the one to help put the framework together, hold the accountability. You're going to need to get the feedback from the supervisors and the experts out on the floor and how to build that. But Melissa, I mean, any thoughts on your end?
Yeah, I would say, again, just exactly like you said, Joni, keep it flexible. Really, I never encourage anybody to be overly prescriptive about what their OJT is, but you really want to depend on your mentor. At this time, in our country, we don't have an end test, sort of that final thing to say an outside body is going to, an outside organization is going to say, yes, this person is competent. So your mentor has to say, this person has demonstrated, as in they've witnessed, they've observed, demonstrated proficiency on each of the competencies. And that means that you really have to check in with yourself about, can they do certain things that are listed on the set of competencies, and not just that, oh yeah, sure they can do that because you're assuming that they can do it, but that there's been observed demonstration that they are proficient on each of those sets of competencies. At the end of the day, it's your program. These are your people that are trained by you to work in your company. And obviously, you want them to be fully qualified. So you're not going to say, yes, they're proficient unless they are. So it's kind of on the honor system, but but at the end of the day, the only beneficiary or person who's going to, be hindered by an untrained person is the company who's doing the training. So obviously you want to train your person um, to a level that they have a proficiency that's acceptable. But you don't have to be, overly prescriptive about, oh, they've only had 500 hours and they need 550. If they're proficient, they're proficient. So those are my thoughts.
I think that's good guidance. You both mentioned hours, so lots of hours here are going to be obtained and completed by people in the program. So someone had a question in the pre-survey around logging work hours. So Melissa, are there any best methods for apprenticeships or for apprentices to log their work hours? And as well, are there any digital tools that you've seen companies use to record hours instead of relying on paper?
Sure. Yes, there's a growing number of digital tools that are available. There's different apps. There's tools like WorkHands or Apprenticescope or Apprentix. There's many tools. And I would say that there's not one that I would recommend over another, but I would answer this question under a framework of sort of, the diffusion of innovation, the rate of adoption. If it is easier for your company to use a method that you're already doing. Let's say you already have a process where you log people's hours. Well, use that because it's going to not be a change over what you're already doing. And everything else, it's such a change to adopt the apprenticeship program in the first place that as many ways as you can make it fit into the things that you're already doing, the better off you'll be and the broader the adoption will be. So, don't reinvent the wheel. If you figure out after doing the apprenticeship program for some time that, this could be more efficient in one way or another, like I said before, make it an iterative process. I know many programs who kind of started with a piece of paper, an actual physical piece of paper. Put your hours here that you've done for each of these competencies, and they put it on the apprentice to do. Others just kind of log the number of hours that they're working and the competencies on different on the proficiencies on different competencies are sort of separated from the hours. It's however it fits with the things that you're already doing. That is the best way to start.
Good guidance. And Joni, any feedback from you on how you folks are logging hours?
So I think that we're using the good old fashioned Excel. I wrote down some of the things that Melissa said. I was curious about that. But yeah, the best that I think we did so far is just take the number of hours. And somebody had helped set that up for me. But then as they log their hours in, they subtract. So that way they know how much that they have left. Because that can get pretty tedious. Overall. So again, we have the employee be the one to document it. The supervisor or the mentor should oversee it. But then, HR should make sure that it is getting done. But yeah, we at one point, it was a while back that there was paper, and that things get lost. People forget to turn it in, and the paper's the worst, for sure. But yeah, what you're looking for is a mechanism just to have some proof that this person truly has been trained. It doesn't need to be something so over the top, because typically the Department of Labor does trust you when you said, yes, this person has everything, I've got this, and we're following the agreement that we put forward, and that we're following it. So we just use Excel. Again, my technical trainer is the one that's overseeing it. He looks at it weekly. Great for him, because we have 17 apprentices right now. So I don't need him to take all of his time to make sure, but just a spot check to make sure that they are, doing as they said that they're going to do. But yeah, maybe we should check out some of the recommendations that Melissa mentioned as well. And I do like that when Melissa says, don't recreate the wheel, use what you're already using if you've got a system. So I think that's very smart.
I do
Yeah.
want to add one thing, and that is, for people listening, that use something. Don't think that just because I said, oh, it's flexible, it's open, that you can just kind of ignore that piece. You will be asked by the Department of Labor to provide, during a program review, you'll be asked, they'll see who's listed in Rapids or your portal, and they'll say, okay, for these particular apprentices, I want to see their work logs and their proof of wages. And so you need to be able to document that. And it's not a good time to try to remember what happened. You must be documenting it somewhere, somehow. It's not super loosey goosey, but do try to use what you have already.
Yeah. And I think the two sources you mentioned were Apprentice Scope and workhands.com. So those could be tools that perhaps your company could explore if you're looking for some technology or digital tools that can help you as well. So it sounds like paper is kind of probably not most efficient, but if that's where you need to start, that's where you can start, and then look at look at some maybe other enhancements for the future. So when you're looking at, we have here a question for you, Joni. Do you have any tips for how to differentiate an apprenticeship program when you have multiple people that start together with varying levels of experience and expertise?
Yeah. So if I understand the question correctly, so I think of two different scenarios that I run into. So my first and could be most common is when I pull an apprentice from another company, and we need to validate where they are, because not to say that anybody would embellish about their background or what they've done, but typically if they are in some sort of program, there's some evidence that they should be able to bring along with them, and including schooling as well too. And then from there, what we've done is we've done the best that we can to say, okay, if they were with us and they have all of this experience in this schooling, where would they fall into our apprenticeship program? Because we have a certain criteria of hours and education that someone needs to meet before they move on to the next level. So if I take how much schooling they've had and how many hours, then I fit them into a category. And then that's where they take it from there and continue to grow. So that's one example. The other that I've actually ran into quite often too is that because you have a set scale, so if someone's a 2-year apprentice, they're making X, but then I've got somebody who maybe I'm pulling from internally that's, let's say, a technician on presses, and they might be at this 1-year mark or a 1.5 year mark of wages, to entice people to come to attract them, and they're probably great candidates to consider. I don't take money away. What I've done before is I've adjusted small increases, so that I give them some reward as they accomplish some things, but they're really then the others catch up to them at some point, and then they start growing together. So I've done that, because as we know, if you think of a recent high school grad, you're not going to put them at a really high wage when they're coming in with no experience. but if I pull somebody who's been in the workforce for a while and truly does have some semi-technical skills, I don't want to penalize them to come into the program. So what I've done is kept them there, kind of created a new wage scale for them to move on smaller increments. But then that way they catch up, and then that way at the 4.5 year mark, they graduate, they're all at the same rate of pay. So that's how I've handled both situations there. And I think it's the best that I can do, because I know wages can be a sensitive topic, but so far I think we've been able to manage that pretty well.
Good advice, and thanks for sharing that practical application from your company. So we're near the time of completion for our program today. I want to make sure that we allow you, Joni and Melissa, to kind of give final pieces of advice and guidance for companies and industry leaders who are listening online with us today. So Melissa, what's some final guidance you would give to companies and or leaders here who are on the call today who are thinking of starting a registered apprenticeship program or who are already on this journey?
Thanks. I would say apprenticeships are not a standalone product. They are part of a broader overall ecosystem in your workforce, and they're going to require partnerships. And so just having others in your court is going to be critical. Intermediary support, which I've mentioned, community colleges, which Joni has mentioned. Just understand that you don't have to do this alone, and there's a lot of support. And I would also recommend that for people who are nervous and they don't know if they should start it, or they think people are going to leave, the best resource you have is listening to employers who are already doing it, like Joni and Pridgeon and Clay, because I don't actually know of any employer who has ever participated in an apprenticeship program who doesn't love it once they start. It's just a kind of a lift at the beginning, and then once that program is in place, it'll be pretty much operational. So that's my final piece of advice.
Great. And Joni, your final piece of advice for our folks listening today.
So to our folks listening to us, my advice is that if you start this, you invest in it, is to stay on top of it. The worst thing that can happen is if you take your eye off it and you start having someone just kind of pigeonholed in an area and not spread around for training, or if an employee is not doing their part of the agreement to complete the schooling. It's just really to stay on top of it, hold the integrity of the program, and that's going to be on us. And that's what, how we feel in HR and in training is that, we're excited about it. We believe in it. And so we're going to hold everyone accountable, ourselves, the apprentice, the mentors, and the supervisors, to make sure that it's a good, productive program. So that is my advice to the listeners today.
Wonderful advice. So hopefully we've inspired some folks to either, again, restart or consider starting a program at their companies and organizations. I know in the group chat, Jen Amburn, our facilitator today, has put Melissa's direct contact information, her email. And Joni, I don't know if you're willing to connect with folks, but I'm sure
Sure.
LinkedIn could be a resource, or if you want to put your email if interested. And I think our next slide is a QR code. So we have lots of resources online. So this webinar is just one of many that we have produced on this subject. And again, we're really passionate around recruiting, especially more women into registered apprenticeship programs. So think about some of those female talented people you have, and what a great way to develop them in this industry and into a different and more enhanced career and enhanced career pathway at your organization and in the industry. So if you scan this QR code, it will bring you to our web resource. There's also an information form there. So that information form you can complete, where you are in this stage. And we then help to do an introduction to JFF, or as well, as was mentioned, Melissa gave her information, so you can also reach out to her direct to learn more as to how they can support you. So I just want to say thank you to Joni and to Melissa for sharing your industry expertise, advice, and guidance. This is invaluable as we try to all learn more about how to better recruit and retain talent. And thanks so much for sharing all of your great insights today. So I appreciate you participating.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks to our listeners and audience, and hope you learned something and have some great takeaways to bring back to your organizations and teams. So thanks so much. Oh, and happy Apprenticeship Day. I forgot to mention as we close out today. So happy National Apprenticeship Day today. And if you have an existing program, how great to celebrate it online to maybe inspire some others to start programs or to enroll in your program. So thanks so much and have a wonderful day.
Thank you.
Thanks.